So this next couple recipes uses lentils, and so lentils are part of the legume family, or very similar in the same family as beans. They're a great substitute for meat, and because they're a good source of protein, but at the same time, since they're a plant, they also have really good sources of fiber, and fiber itself really helps to lower cholesterol, and lentils themselves don't have a lot of those saturated fats and things that beef has that causes your cholesterol to spike up like that, and so they're a really good substitute for some of those meats. And so what we'll be doing today is showing you a couple different recipes of how to use lentils in place of ground beef. And so we'll be making some lentil tacos, some lentil burgers, as well as using lentils in place of ground beef for some of those things for a spaghetti sauce. And so whenever you buy your lentils, it's important to put them in a strainer and check for any stones that may have got packaged in with them. And if you find any stones, then you just pick them out. And so we measured all the lentils out that we need for our recipes, and we'll just check through it. And then if we don't see any stones or anything after that, then we'll keep them in the strainer and then just rinse them with water to get off any of the impurities or debris with them. So, and then if you have a large batch, then you can use a spoon to kind of get the ones up from the bottom and bring them to the top so that you can wash those with some water too. And so the nice thing about lentils is, instead of beans where you have to soak them overnight before you cook them, is that lentils themselves, you don't have to soak them before you cook them. You just wash them, and then you'll boil them for about 20 minutes or so, and then they'll be ready to use for your recipes, as opposed to beans where it takes almost a whole day of soaking before you can be ready to cook them.
Okay, and so what you want to do is make sure that the lentils have a good, say, inch of water on top of them. Alrighty.
So now that we have the lentils in the pot with their water, we can place it on the stove for them to boil. And so to cook lentils, what you want to do is turn it on to high, and you'll want to bring them to a boil. And then once it's boiling, you'll turn the heat down to low and then cover the pot with a lid and then just let them simmer. And you usually want to let them simmer for about 20 minutes or so. And then at that 20-minute mark is when you'll want to check them to see if they've softened up a little bit and are ready and cooked.
And the other thing about lentils is that they're very inexpensive, and so you can buy them in bulk. And of course you do get it from the food bank. And sometimes you can cook 3 batches and make 3 different types of meals. So that way you don't have to do other cooking during the week, but you can also, once they're cooked, they keep in the refrigerator for a week. You can freeze them, and then they can keep in the freezer for 3 months. And if you don't feel like using your lentils this week, you can keep them in a jar. I have mason jars, but you may have some spaghetti sauce jars. Just clean them out, because you want them to be sealed tightly so that you can keep them in your pantry, and they will even last for a year. And if you don't have any jars, Ziplocs will do just the same thing. And so again, lentils are just so versatile. I think they're underappreciated and underutilized, and they have so many health benefits. So we will show you how to prepare wonderful meals with them.
Lentils are boiling. We'll go ahead and turn down the heat to low, and then we'll get our lid and cover off the top with the lid to keep the heat in there. And then in about 20 minutes we'll check them and make sure they're soft and see if they're cooked. Okay, so now that the lentils have been simmering for about 20 minutes, we're going to go ahead and check. And so whenever you check your food, you want to have a little bowl and your own spoon away from it to keep it sanitary. So you get a little bit of scoop of the lentils, put them in the bowl, and then you'll go ahead and taste test them. And so what you're checking for with lentils is to make sure that they're softened up and no longer hard. And so these seem pretty good. I think they're softened up quite a bit, and so I think they should be ready to use for the rest of our recipes.
And if you notice, it looks like all of the water has boiled away, but there is still some. And so what I like to do is save the water because that has some of the nutrients from the lentils that have that are now as part of the water. And you'll see with some of our recipes, especially the lentil tacos, you need to add water, and so it would be much better to use the lentil juice. I also keep it in my refrigerator, and whenever I'm making whole grains, like even if I'm making rice, to have the juice with my brown rice, it just adds a nice flavor, or really any kind of grain.
All right, so now that the lentils have finished cooking and boiling, we'll go ahead and strain them out. And then like we were saying, we want to save some of the water or the juice in the bottom since that still has a lot of good nutrients in it. And so you'll want to put a bowl under your strainer to catch all of that. And so there we go, we have the lentils strained out, and then that's the rest of the water that we boiled with it and we'll use for later. Alright, so a lot of our recipes call for onions, and so I'll walk you through some of the steps on how to cut an onion properly. And so since onions are round, the first thing you want to do is cut off the end. And so the end you want to cut off is the top of it. So this is the bottom where all the roots are. And you'll cut off the top to give you a nice flat surface to cut with. And so now that it's nice and flat, you put it on the flat end, and then you cut it in half from there. So, and then once it's cut, then it's a lot easier to peel, and so you get that first layer under there, and then peel that off with the rest of the skin. And once it's all peeled off, you can throw that into the treasure bowl. And then we'll go ahead and peel the other half. Okay, and then so to dice the onion, you'll take the onion and then you'll make kind of angled cuts into it, and then just continue with the cuts all the way throughout the onion. And then whenever you're cutting, it's important to make sure to keep your fingers in line with the claw so that you don't cut any fingers. And so the claw really helps keep your fingers out of the way of the knife. And so we're just moving down the onion, and then you really want to make sure to keep the root on, because the root keeps the onion together as you're cutting it. And you can go ahead and spin it around to make the cutting on the rest easier. Okay, and then now that it's cut all the way through, you can go ahead and cut the root off and then put that into the treasure as well. And then since it's cut, you'll go ahead and take a couple pieces off, and then you'll have them on the cutting board, and then just move down with your knife to cut them and dice it up. And so whenever you're cutting, if you have a chef's knife, you can use kind of a rocking motion with it, or any other knife. It's important to make sure you're kind of going back and forth with it, more like a sawing motion as opposed to just going straight down with the knife to cut it.
So this segment is going to be on how you could use lentils as a ground meat substitute. And so you can see that our cooked lentils are small and firm, so it can simulate ground beef in a sauce. We also have some diced red pepper and onion, and that way it simulates ground beef. And the other thing that I like to add to my spaghetti sauce, at least, are mushrooms. Mushrooms, again, add that umami flavor, that savory flavor that keeps you coming back for more. So umami foods are like Worcestershire sauce or anchovy paste or mushrooms, especially dried mushrooms that you rehydrate, Parmesan cheese. But I'm a busy woman, as I'm sure many of you at home are also very busy people, and to cut up mushrooms, it takes time. And so what I like to do is just buy frozen mushrooms. And I really like the shiitake mushrooms because they have more health benefits than your just plain white button mushrooms or portobellos. So I thawed this last night, you can see, so that we're not dealing with frozen mushrooms, but they're very watery. And so I did try and squeeze some of the water out. And I want to get all the water out because otherwise your sauce is going to be a little thin, and I like things thick. So, so again, if you remember what we had talked about, you just, once again, grasp your knife and you cut. And you can do it this way. You can even try in your blender if you have one, but you really don't want to make a paste. You want this to simulate ground beef in your sauce. Okay, and so this looks pretty good. And what we will be doing next is moving over to the stove so that you can see how we start making our spaghetti sauce. So now we're going to start cooking our ground beef substitute spaghetti sauce made with lentils. And so similar to most of the dishes, you want to heat up your pot and then add the oil. I don't like to add the oil with the pot when you first start, because I don't want the possibility of the oil burning. And so we'll heat this up medium, and it seems pretty warm. So I'll just add some olive oil. And I'm gonna wait until I see this glisten. And olive oil, you've heard us, if you've watched any of our other videos, we really promote olive oil. In fact, one of the components in olive oil is camphorol, which is very similar in structure to ibuprofen. So for those of you with aching joints, using olive oil on a regular basis may help those arthritic pains. And in Spain, where they grow olives, they did a lot of research, and they gave families olive oil and nuts, and to see how that compares with, say, the American diet. And what they found within 3 months, blood pressure was improved, blood sugar was improved, and then they carried these studies out for years, and it was going to be a long-term study, but they stopped it after 5 or 6 years because they saw that fewer people had strokes and heart attacks. And so using olive oil for its health benefits. And then the other arm had nuts, which are also quite healthy. So this looks like it might be ready. You want to try a little bit of water in here? Yes. Okay. So I will turn this down a little. And so the first thing that I'm going to add are my onions. And then what I like to do is layer the flavor so that whenever I add an ingredient, I'll also add a little pinch of salt. And then we'll cook the onions until they're glistening, and then we will add some of the other ingredients. Next, I'm going to add probably the mushrooms, because I think they will take longer to cook than my diced red pepper. So again, I add a little bit of olive oil. I add my mushrooms, and just a word or two about mushrooms. I know that they're often on salad bars, the raw mushrooms, but I do not recommend eating raw mushrooms because some of the mushrooms actually have a component in them that could be harmful, and it really needs, that component needs to be denatured by heat. Denatured meaning it needs to be converted to a different form. And so I just added that, and to stay true to what I said, I'm only going to be adding a pinch of salt, which, I mean, it's minuscule, really. Next, I will add the bell pepper. And once again, a little bit of olive oil. Because you'll see it says a tablespoon of olive oil on the recipe, and that's probably about how much I will add, but I do it in layers. We'll let that sit for a little while. Stop it. Okay, so this is my secret ingredient in my spaghetti sauce, carrots. Because carrots have natural sweetness, and I like my sauce not to be as acidic, so I like to use carrot. And so you will notice I will not peel my carrot because I did wash it. But carrots, the skin of the carrot actually still contains some bacteria, and that's good for our intestines, and because there are many microbes that are also living in our intestines, and they're doing wonderful things for our body if they are the healthy microbes. They turn on and off cancer genes, they lengthen the parts of our chromosomes so that we could live longer. And so they also, if you're not, they're going to be living in your gut, and if you don't provide fiber, then what happens? The bacteria actually eat some of the mucus that's on your membranes in your intestines, and you may have heard of that term leaky gut. So we want to help our gut microbiome by adding healthy microbes from the soil, and also eating lots of fiber. So I am going to cut off the parts that I'm not going to use, and I'm going to use that for my soup stock. And then there are, what I want to do is like grate or make small slivers. And so I just wanted to show you this handy dandy little tool that you can easily go like this and you get nice slices. And you can see nice little julienne slices. But, you know, we could go back to the way that our grandparents and parents cooked, and we could just grate the carrot too. Works just the same. Because you want these to be in small pieces, so that way they can cook faster as opposed to dicing them. And you want them to really impart their flavors. Okay, and so next I'm going to be adding my carrots. So I'll add a little bit more of that olive oil. And then my carrots. And once again, a little bit of salt. And then what we need to do is let this cook for about 10 minutes so all of the vegetables get soft. So you have seen this technique before. Once our vegetables are all nice and soft, we make an opening in the center. We add some olive oil, and then we add garlic. I added 5 cloves because I like garlic. Your family might want less, or maybe there are some families that actually want more. So I cook that up, and the garlic cooks up pretty fast, and we don't want it to burn. So I put it in the center, and then I'll mix it with the rest. And after about 30 seconds of the garlic doing that, I will add a little bit more oil, because this is when I add my other spices. And you can see there's quite a lot here, but again, I like spices. And so, as we discussed with other ones, you need the oil and the heat to really make them fragrant and really release all of their nutrients. So we put that in. It almost is a way of activating the spices. So you can use herbs, and those are always nice to add at the end, but spices need to be added at the beginning of the dish so that they get activated. And boy, does that smell nice. Okay, so now we have all of that, and our options. If you had seen our roasted segment, you could have roasted some tomatoes and used that and put that in this sauce. But instead, we are going to add a large can. I always like the puree. So now we have the puree in here. And I don't know let me bring this up to the camera so that you can see that, you know, it's very chunky because of the vegetables. And then we're going to be putting lentils in there too. So it's going to have that same consistency of spaghetti sauce that the family is all used to. All right, and then you could use crushed tomatoes. This one I actually got the one with the basil. You can use whole tomatoes, and then you can just crush them in the pot. Now, we talked about umami before, so it has the mushrooms, and then the other ingredient that will really give umami is tomato paste. And so this is an 8-ounce can of tomato paste. Okay, oh, and now it's starting to boil. And so let me just turn this down a little bit. Mix this all up. And we're gonna let this simmer for about 60 minutes or so. And then we're going to add our lentils a little bit later, so I have them all ready, and for the last 30 minutes. So it all depends on how long your family cooks their spaghetti sauce. I like mine cooked longer, but some of you might not want as deep of a flavor. So again, recipes are just suggestions, and then you make the changes according to your family preferences. So we're gonna let this simmer and be back. Okay, so our spaghetti sauce has been simmering now for an hour. I'm gonna move it off the burner so I don't get splattered with sauce. And now is the chance for us to add our lentils. Mix that up. So here you can see, look at this. And then now the lentils will simmer in this with the spices for another 30 minutes or so. And so they can soften even more, and then it'll be ready to put on top of your zucchini noodles if you wanted to try something different instead of your whole grain pasta. Okay, so now I just wanted to show you our spaghetti sauce that you can put over your pasta, and you see it looks quite meaty. And I'm sure your family will enjoy this. And it's, again, a inexpensive way instead of using ground beef by using your lentils. And you can put this over whole wheat pasta. I mentioned earlier the zoodles, which are zucchini noodles, that you can spiralize into spaghetti. But if you do choose white pasta, the white pasta will enter your bloodstream quicker because it's a simple sugar. And so one way of helping lower the glycemic load of your meal is just have a pasta meal with a nice healthy green salad and vegetables, and use oil and vinegar. It doesn't matter which kind of vinegar, whichever one you like the best.
The reason that vinegar helps lower your blood sugar is that it actually works similarly to some of those medications for diabetes. It inhibits one of the proteins in your gut from breaking down sugars into the single molecule. And whenever that protein's not working and it doesn't break the sugar down, then you're not able to actually absorb the sugar and go into your bloodstream. And so you'll taste the sugar, but since it won't be broken down into those simple forms to be absorbed, then your blood sugar won't raise as much by using vinegar in your salads and things like that.